And welcome. This is the July 13th meeting of the Baltimore County Design Review Panel. It is now called to order, and I am the chair, Cecily Bedwell. We'll start with a roll call to account for the members of the panel present on this call. And when you hear your name, please say aye. Remember to unmute as you do so. Let's see, Mr. Khan.
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Ra.
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Sharma.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you all. And as we get started this evening, Marta, I'll just ask, are there any changes to the tentative agenda?
No, there are no changes, Cecily. Thank you.
Perfect. And then we'll go over the meeting minutes for the May 11th meeting. In a May 26th email, you'll have received the draft minutes for the May 11th DRP meeting. Has everyone had the opportunity to review the draft minutes? And are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Hearing none, who would like to, on the panel, would like to make a motion to accept the minutes as circulated?
This is Donald. I move we approve the minutes as submitted.
Thank you. Is there a second?
This is Matt.
Hannah. Oh, okay.
Ms. Rod, would you like to second?
Sure.
Okay, very good. Thank you for seconding. And all in favor, say aye.
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 And aye. Very good. Those the motion carries. I appreciate that. Okay, now we'll go through the opening statement, and I'll read this out loud. This is rather lengthy, but bear with us. There are a few important points here. So Title 4, Subtitle 2, Part 1, Sections 32-4-203 and 34-4-204 establish the Design Review Panel, otherwise known as the DRP. The DRP was established to encourage design excellence and shall act in a consulting and advisory capacity to the other agencies involved in the process for reviewing development plans. The objectives for the DRP's assessment include spatial, visual, functional relationships to topography, the natural and built features, as well as the surrounding features of the site, the integration of streetscapes, pedestrian pathways, and other amenities, streets and sidewalks, that they're laid out in a safe and convenient manner, and that parking is a positive design element. That the elements such as buildings, parking garages, and other structures are spatially and visually integrated and suitable to their surroundings in proportion, massing, and type of materials, colors, signage, and other elements. Plant materials are selected and cited to help define the site, provide a theme, frame views, and enhance the architecture, street character, and improve the microclimate and transition to other dissimilar uses or screen objectionable views and uses, reduce noise levels and glare. In carrying out its duties, the DRP utilizes the guidelines, plans, and architectural principles in the Comprehensive Manual of Development Policies and/or Master Plan, as well as other guidelines and regulations adopted into law. Certain areas of the county were designated by the County Council to require review by the DRP. The panel will provide a technical review of the proposed project. Issues relative to zoning, setback relief, environmental and stormwater management, and traffic regulations do not fall under the purview of the DRP and are regulated through the appropriate agencies responsible for those aspects of the development review process. The panel consists of 9 members. All are professionals with practical knowledge in the matters of design. For the purposes of making recommendations on a particular project, 3 members shall constitute a quorum. The attendance and comments of each member shall be recorded in the minutes, which shall be an open record and available along with all documents submitted to the panel for inspection and copying by the public. There will be an opportunity for the community to offer comments and suggestions at the conclusion of the applicant's presentation. These comments will be included in the written record of the meeting. When a speaker is called up to speak, please keep your comments focused on the design perspectives within your allotted 2 minutes time. If you're speaking on behalf of a community group, you will get 5 minutes. And please, again, this panel only addresses those items relative to design features and not stormwater management or other parking regulations, as I mentioned before. At the conclusion of the meeting, the Department of Planning will sum up the recommendations of the panel before a motion for vote is suggested. Recent legislation has changed the panel's recommendations to be advisory on the hearing officer and the various county agencies unless the hearing officer or agency find that the panel's actions constitute an abuse of its discretion or are unsupported by the documentation and evidence presented. Disposition of the plan will be determined as either approved with conditions, or requiring additional review with a second meeting required. And that is the end of our opening statement. Thank you for bearing with me on that. The items for discussion this evening are the 502, 506 Baltimore Avenue in the downtown Towson commercial review area. So we'll move on to that, and I'll ask if the presenters are ready. The floor is now yours.
Cecily, this is Jennifer Nugent with planning.
Yeah, yes, I know you.
No, I just, we have a little logistical, housekeeping thing here. So Joe Usifero, who is on our panel, is on the design team for this project. And so, Marta, if we could move him as a panelist instead of a participant, that is the request. So he's recused himself with the panel, but he is on the design team for the project. So I just wanted to let everybody know that.
Thank you, Jen. Okay, with that, housekeeping in order. Marta, if you're all set with that change or that notation, the presenters can start presenting, and we will just ask the presenters to keep the presentation brief. We've all had a chance to review the materials, so don't feel like you have to over elaborate, but you can certainly touch upon those design aspects that are required by the downtown commercial area.
Excellent. Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bedwell, and good evening, panelists. My name is Brandon Rao with Bowler. I'm excited to be presenting to you this evening on behalf of WRH Property Holdings, who is the owner and developer of the properties at 502, 504, and 506 Baltimore Avenue in Towson. I'll give a brief introduction, and then we'll turn the virtual mic over to the team to provide further detail on the proposed improvements. Joining me tonight is Waleed Hodge with WRH Property Holdings, David Marcosi, the lead architect at CI Design, Ezra Soy-Tutan, the lead landscape architect planner at CI Design, Chrissy Bauer and Joe Zafaro from Bowler, and then Adam Baker, our lead land use attorney from Rosenberg, Martin Greenberg. Our team is here to review the proposed multifamily apartment development at 502, 504, and 506 Baltimore Avenue in Towson. It is our intention to present the proposed improvements to the panel, review how the proposed improvements comply with the downtown Towson design guidelines, and review and address the conditions noted in the staff report from the Department of Planning. And ultimately, we are here tonight requesting the panel's approval of the proposed improvements that are presented to you this evening. And as you may be familiar with the full development process in Baltimore County, I'll quickly run through where we stand today. We are in the early stages. So today we processed the county concept plan, held the concept plan conference with staff, and held a community input meeting. Those are the formal process pieces. In addition to that, we've held informal meetings with various community groups, members, and staff to discuss the project as well. Should we be fortunate to receive the panel's approval tonight, our next step will be to process a development plan and ultimately work towards the hearing officer's hearing and with the administrative law judge. Before handing the virtual mic over to the team, I wanted to identify the existing conditions and set the base for our proposed improvements. The site is comprised of 3 lots. The total is 0.876 acres. The site is zoned BMDT and is in the downtown Towson Design Review Panel area. There are ultimately 3 buildings at the subject property today. These 3 buildings will be raised with the proposed redevelopment of the site. Additionally, there are trees on the property that will be impacted by the proposed improvements. The removal of any trees greater than 10 inches in diameter will be mitigated in accordance with the downtown Towson design guidelines and in concert with the Office of Department of Planning and DPWT. So at this point, I'll let David Marcosi, the lead architect, walk through the proposed improvements with you. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate that. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Again, my name is Dave Marcosi with CI Design. I'll try to keep the rest of the presentation brief and focus on the key elements. With that, Martha, if we can jump to slide 3. One more slide. One back, Martha, sorry. There we go. All right, so just a quick context reference, 502 to 506 Baltimore Avenue, located in the southwest corner of Baltimore and Allegheny. Again, as Brandon mentioned, currently 3 separate properties, all containing one-story structures. We're looking to clear the site and consolidate and construct a 502 multifamily building. Next slide, Martha. We do have some existing condition photographs. I'm not going to spend too much time on these, but if we have to, we can refer back to them. Next slide. Just some relevant context and walking time frames from the site. Again, I think we're pretty familiar with this, but Calvary Baptist Church across Baltimore Avenue, Trinity Episcopal Church, School and Surprise Shop, Caddy Corner from Baltimore Avenue, Allegheny. We are sharing the block with an 8-story office building directly to the south of the site, and its supportive parking structure directly to the west of our site. County Courthouse and Government Buildings and Patriot Plaza just south across Pennsylvania Avenue. Next slide, Marta. Again, we're looking to construct 5 stories of wood over 2 stories of concrete podium, containing 143 multifamily units on 161 structured parking spaces. We're focused our attention on providing a comfortable connection to the public realm along Allegheny and Baltimore Ave. We also held the primary street walls along Allegheny and Baltimore to align with the adjacent structures. And in doing so, we're capable of giving back between 8 and 10 feet of space along the edges to public experience and open spaces along the edges. Generally speaking, we are, in terms of sustainability, the project will achieve certification under NGBS program. Design features will include LED lighting, efficient HVAC systems, low flow plumbing fixtures, efficient windows, Energy Star appliances, etc. And we will be specifying recycled and regional materials for the project. Construction practices will comply with NGBS as well, with controlled inspections, waste management planning, proper storage, handling, testing and balancing, and among other third-party inspections and commissioning will be required to achieve that certification. Next slide, Marta. Quick look at the site circulation. The red lines and arrows represent vehicular circulation, where we anticipate on utilizing the service alley to the west of the site to access the lower level parking deck as the grades drop approximately 10 feet from Allegheny. We are providing a second egress and ingress at the top of the parking level along Baltimore Avenue. And by doing those 2 separate entrances, we're capable of eliminating any internal ramping and maximizing parking spaces for the project. Trash collection will occur in the service alley to the west, and has been worked out with a private collection company that dumpsters would be contained within the building, pulled out during collection time, and returned to their dedicated locations, eliminating any visual trash experiences from the public realm. I'd also like to note that there's a BGE easement to the south of the site between our building and the adjacent 8-story office building. We will be providing landscape edge experiences along those. The blue lines represent pedestrian circulation, and it's our intention to create a ground level relationship between the public realm, primary building entrance, and residential stoop experiences at the grade level, and encourage walkable opportunities along the street edges. Next slide, Marta. Just zooming in a bit closer to those edges, you can see that the relationship between unit entrance and public walk separated by landscape and streetscape that align with Towson standards. Real requirements for where street trees will occur every 30 foot on center, with adequate planting pits with tree guardrails and intermittent lighting poles, also to comply with Towson standards. Not illustrated here, but we will be providing fixed benches and temporary bike storage locations along the edges. Existing parking meters along Allegheny will remain and will be coordinated with the design. We do envision the primary corner of the project to be receptive to and cater to the occasional pedestrian interaction. And also on this slide, as well as you can see, is a few of our precedent images that grasp our expectations and experiences of street conditions. Next slide, Marta. I'd like to bring Ezra in, the landscape architect, to the project. She can kind of go over some of these street section concepts and ideas. Yeah.
We have a 4-foot wide tree pit coming from the section, a 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk, and about 12 to 16-foot wide planting area at the edge of the building. These planting areas will be part of the stormwater management system. We do not plan on providing irrigation, as we're proposing sycamore trees along the Allegheny Avenue, which are native to Maryland region. And typical shade tree size, the proposed shade tree size will be about 2.5 to 3 inch caliper and about 14 to 16 foot height at the time of installation. Next slide, please. Along Baltimore Avenue, we have about 7 to 13 feet wide planting area along the building, and we are proposing red maple trees here. In terms of the paving materials, sidewalks will be concrete with brick edging along the tree pits per the downtown Towson standards. We will be proposing light color concrete pavers to complement building materials at the main building entry. We can skip to slide 15, Martha. Next one, please. The tree openings will be 4 by 10 with 24-inch height ornamental fence per the standards, and we'll be providing amended existing topsoil with minimum depths. The soil depth will be to match the root ball or minimum 24-inch deep. Street light poles will be located at 30 feet on the center. Next slide, please.
Great. Let me go back one more time. That's good. Perfect there. Thanks, Ezra. And I also want to reiterate our intentions along Baltimore Avenue with the existing trees. It is our intention to try to maintain those trees. We do have some challenging concerns with our existing building and its proximity to those trees, but it is our intention to try to maintain those during the course of this project. So moving into the plans, jumping onto the lower level plan, which is to the left of the slide, shows access from the service alley and is fully dedicated to the site parking. The ground level plan to the right shows vehicular access from Baltimore Avenue, lobby leasing, and dedicated amenity spaces at the corner. Baltimore and Allegheny is represented in blue. Residential storage and residential bike storage is represented in the gray hashed area, and the balance of the program is dedicated to residential units, specifically hugging the street edge and hiding the parking deck from pedestrian roam. And for reference, green represents 1-bedroom units, orange 2-bedroom units, and the red represents studio units for this plan and the remaining plans in the presentation. Next slide, Marta. Level 2 plan to the left is primarily dedicated to residential units and amenity space in blue that opens up to the exterior courtyard and exterior amenity spaces. You can also see the voided space along the Baltimore Avenue edge, which is a 2-story breezeway that will also contain an exterior covered amenity space for the residents. The level 3 plan to the right is dedicated fully to residential units with a pedestrian bridge connection that would be open to an exterior within the volume of that 2-story breezeway space. Next slide, Marta. Typical floors 3 through 6 are also fully dedicated to the residential units, with the top floor having another residential amenity space. and exterior overlook of Patriot Plaza at the southeast part of the plan to your right. And next slide. So we went through a couple iterations for the elevations, and we received feedback from local community groups, as Brandon had mentioned. This proposed design was a direction that was the desired approach. Generally speaking, we're looking to provide a slightly more traditional aesthetic with architectural order and massing that pulls from other contextual multifamily projects and similar scale. The design does provide an architectural rhythm that is elaborated with the heavy contrasting materials and utilizes facade projections that vary between 2 and 4 foot along the street edges. These projections create interest and provide depth along the facades and specifically at the pedestrian level. We transition the top level of the building to encourage a more proportional relationship between our building and its adjacent context. The corner of Baltimore and Allegheny has a hierarchical presence, identifying the corner with the main entry and building signage. We do envision the ground level to be a thin Roman style masonry, supporting the breakdown and intimate pedestrian scale. Other materials would be of high quality cementitious panels and cementitious lap siding throughout. And you can see in the elevations that we are looking to provide a good amount of landscaping to soften the edges and support comfortable experiences as you do walk in front and along our building. Next slide, Marta. At the service alley facade, which is the top elevation that faces the adjacent parking garage, we're proposing an arbitrary pattern of movement with transom windows to provide some indirect light along the interior single loaded corridor. At the parking deck levels, we are opening the garage to maximize ventilation with screening at grade for security. The rear elevation at the bottom of the screen opens itself to the adjacent office building, exposing the courtyard. Though the courtyard is private to the residents, it does provide a decent and visual pleasing view for those looking down from the office building. And we will be proposing the similar approach to the parking garage levels at the lower 2 levels. Next slide, Marta. Some interior courtyard elevations that has similar architectural dialogue, same materiality and similar rhythms as the rest of the project. On the top right elevation, you can begin to see how the breezeway begins to interact with the courtyard with pedestrian bridge connection. I don't want to dive too far into this, but we can refer back if anyone had any questions. Next slide, Marta. We do anticipate on using a vinyl window product in the units, white, black, or a mixture thereof. We also envision using an aluminum powder-coated guardrail and glass-filled composite frame guardrail along the project. At the garage levels, where we have opening experiences, we are planning on a tension wire vehicular barrier system and also perforated metal screens at grade, again, for security purposes. Next slide. Just a couple of sections that explain the stacking of the wood over concrete podium, and you can begin to see how the breezeway concept begins to interact with the courtyard. Units will have 12-foot clear ceilings at the ground level and 9-foot clear ceilings at typical floors above. The lobby and amenity space at grade will have a 14-foot clear ceiling. Next slide. Here's a rendering and a few precedent images for the proposed courtyard. Exterior amenity spaces to include outdoor kitchen, lounge, seating, space for exterior activities, fenced off dog run, and private dedicated space for the units along the perimeter of the open courtyard level. Next slide. Here's a perspective rendering of how the courtyard is currently designed, looking to use some festoon lighting and some elevation transition to kind of create some unique spaces for the residences to use. Next slide, Marta. View from the primary corner of Baltimore Allegheny. Next slide. This is a view looking west on Allegheny across the street. Next slide. And a view across the street of Baltimore Ave, looking back at the project. Next slide. We do anticipate on providing warm white exterior building lighting, identifying the building entry and exit points, and for safety measures. In addition to the street pole lights, a linear accent light would occur at the primary corner of Baltimore and Allegheny, with a soft glow at the top of the building. Next slide. And for signage, we will be providing signage for parking and entries and primary building identification. Building signage letters will be white, at night halo illuminated, and adequately scaled and located for visual visibility and identification. The primary sign at the corner of Baltimore Allegheny is approximately 20 foot tall. I know it's tough to see in the screen, but is 20 foot tall vertically, and each letter of that sign is approximately 2 foot in height. And next slide. It's our presentation. I hope I kept it brief for you and to the highlighted points. We look forward to responding to any questions, and thanks for your time.
Thank you. Let's see, at this time, we'll open the floor to public input and feedback from the community. If you're representing a community group, you'll have 5 minutes to speak. If you're speaking as an individual, you will have 2 minutes to speak. Marta, are there any speakers signed up who wish to speak?
Yes, we have a request from Beth Miller. She will be representing Green Towson Alliance. And Beth, I just promoted you that you can speak and you can unmute yourself. And after you're done, I will turn back to the attendee. Ms. Miller, can you hear us?
Okay, I think I've got it. Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I could not get on my computer, so I'm holding my phone up, so I hope you can hear me all right. So thank you for this opportunity to testify before the design review panel on this project. My name is Beth Miller. I'm speaking on behalf of the Green Towson Alliance. We appreciate that this development team has met with the GTA multiple times in a collaborative way. The proposed development incorporates many sustainable features, including LEED certification, an attractive streetscape with a landscape setback, first floor stoops, connections to the sidewalk, native plantings, and bioretention features. Our comments to the board are intended to prioritize some requirements of the downtown Towson district zoning overlay. GTA worked closely with the planning department and our council representative on this zoning overlay back in 2016 to include a sustainability section. With regards to mature trees defined in the code as those with a 10-inch diameter breast height or greater, the intent of the code is to preserve those trees. There are 23 trees on this development site that qualify as mature trees under this definition, totaling 450 inches diameter breast height, and all are shown on the development plan as being removed. The DTD also has streetscape standards with full sidewalks from curb to building face and tree pits. The tree pit size in the DTD says that they should be 6 feet wide, but there's only room on Baltimore Avenue for 4 feet wide pits. More importantly, if this standard is followed on Baltimore Avenue, it would require removal of the 4 mature red maple trees that are growing in a 7.5 to 8 foot wide verge between curb and sidewalk. Using the National Tree Benefit Calculator, those 4 trees are absorbing over 19,000 gallons of stormwater per year. They're conserving 544 kilowatt hours of electricity per year and reducing 2,500 pounds of atmospheric carbon per year. The developer made a brief mention of a proposal we made asking that they retain the 4 existing mature red maple trees, which total 70 inches diameter at breast height on Baltimore Avenue. The CMDP states that different streets in downtown Towson have different functions and different character, and therefore may be treated differently for certain design principles. The 500 and 600 block of Baltimore Avenue have narrow streets and streetscapes compared to others in Towson. They're more residential in scale than the commercial Main Street a few blocks east near York Road. In closing, the development of this site necessitates the removal of one of the last green oases in Towson, affectionately known by residents as the Secret Garden. With increasing urban heat island effect in downtown Towson as large-scale development continues, we should make every effort to retain mature trees. Keeping the residential character of the existing verge and mature street trees along Baltimore Avenue provides a respite from the more urban character of the streetscape proposed for Allegheny and is a significant asset to both the new development and the community as a whole. We ask that the design review panel support this proposal to retain the existing red maple trees and the verge on Baltimore Avenue, acknowledging that construction, staging, and excavation make this a challenge, but encourage the developer to use all means possible during construction to ensure their survival. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Marta, are there any other community members who would like to speak?
I don't see anyone else, but let me check with Brad and Jen.
There's no one in the chat.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. So now we will move to our discussion. And before we do that, though, I'm going to ask Marta to go through the staff report. So Marta, if you would, please run us through your staff report.
Thank you, Cecily. So we prepared our staff report based on the BCZR code references for the project conformance with the regulations as set forth in section 259.16 downtown district. Downtown Towson district. So in terms of environmental sustainability, staff recommends approval of environmental sustainability subject to the following conditions. Number one, coordinate with DPWT and the county landscape architect on the removal of the existing trees in the public right-of-way. Number two, a fee in lieu should be paid to cover the cost of the replacement trees and for installation of the trees only, which shall be used within the downtown Towson overlay district. Number three, indicate how the proposed design will comply with LEED or NGBS standards. In terms of block configuration site design, staff recommends approval of the proposed block configuration site design subject to the following conditions. Number one, coordinate with the DPWT and the county landscape architect on the removal of the existing trees in the public right-of-way. Number two, include additional streetscape amenities to enhance the pedestrian realm, particularly at the corner of Baltimore and Allegheny Avenues. In regards to parking, staff cannot recommend approval of the proposed parking subject to the following conditions. Number one, there are existing parking, public parking spaces and parking meters along Allegheny Avenue. Provide details on how they will be integrated into the proposed site design and label them on the plan. Number two, per BCZR section 259-16A4, at the time of development or redevelopment, the applicant shall identify on its development plan the parking needs associated with the proposed uses and how they will be accommodated. The applicant shall address the following in demonstrating how the parking demands will be accommodated. A, identification of each use with the development and its parking demand assumption. B, the method of supplying the parking for the development shall be identified, such as on-site, leased, or shared, and how any other alternative transportation methods are incorporated into addressing the transportation demands. C, for residential-only buildings, identification of a secondary method for providing additional parking in the event of the original parking supply proves to be inadequate. In terms of downtown open space, staff recommends approval of the proposed open space subject to the following conditions. Number one, provide a calculation and show on the plan the open space requirements of 5% of gross acreage of the development site. Number two, coordinate with DPWT and the county landscape architect on the removal of the existing trees in the public right-of-way. Number three, page 16 of the presentation package shows the tree guard detail label on the landscape plan locations where the tree guards will be provided. On the street level. Number five, provide opportunities for outdoor sitting areas along Baltimore and Allegheny Avenues. Number six, consider a pedestrian plaza space at the corner of Baltimore and Allegheny Avenues to create an enhanced focal point of interest for the development. Any and all features and amenities should be considered to make a unique and memorable space as a feature with the urban core. For building principles and architectures, staff cannot recommend approval of the proposed architecture subject to the following condition. Number one, provide a description on how the proposed building will comply with LEED or NGBS standards. Number two, enhance architectural design by using high-quality building materials. Integrate urban design components into the public realm by using colors, materials, bulk, and massing of building. Building components should be given special treatment such as signature entries and iconic architectural elements. The use of structural base, expressed columns, windows, mullions, horizontal fenestration should be utilized to promote a pedestrian skill. Ground levels should be developed to provide visual interest to pedestrians. Number three, provide alternative color schemes and materials for the proposed building that would be compatible with surrounding neighborhood. Use of lighter and warmer colors is encouraged. For building materials, staff offers the following comments and defers approval of the materials to the DRP. Number one, provide a description on how the proposed building materials will comply with LEED or NGBS and standards. Number two, enhance architectural design by using high-quality building materials. Provide alternative color schemes and materials for the proposed building that would be in spirit with surrounding neighborhood. Use of lighter and warmer colors is encouraged. The character and image should be reinforced by using high-quality materials, textures, patterns, and colors in well-designed in innovative ways, including the use of natural materials that age well. For lighting, staff recommends approval of the lighting subject to the following conditions. Number one, clarify if lighting will be provided on all facades. If so, label them on the building elevations and provide details. Number two, provide more details for the proposed linear accent, presentation package page 30. For signs, staff recommends approval of the proposed signage subject to the following condition. Number one, provide details for all proposed signs, include dimensions, colors, and materials. Clearly indicate all proposed signs on the building elevations. And this concludes our staff report. Thank you, Cecily.
Thank you, Marta. And now we'll open it up for the panel discussion. Let's see, we'll start with Mr. Reynolds.
Hey, Cecily, thank you. Just a few comments. I'll just kind of rattle through them and then kind of follow back up on them. As far as the roads, the sections in the presentation and kind of the condition there in the open space, I see in the illustrative sections the tree pits with the fence, and then it looks like there's bioretention along the building. So I guess one question is going to be, are those bioretention areas intended to be fenced? And if so, the open space is going to start to get quite busy with, two sides of fencing on each side. The second is the tree pit size. I agree with the staff report with making the tree pits larger. 4 feet is quite narrow. It seems like there's space. I would prefer to see the green space along the street personally than kind of having the or kind of a dead or unusable space, so to speak, between the sidewalk and the building. I also think that by making the tree pits wider, per some of the previous comments, I think the opportunity to preserve the trees along Baltimore Avenue could be looked at again. It's not clear on these plans how those trees would be saved. I think if you did a quick overlay, the trees are in different locations than what are shown on the plan. So it seems like a redesign would be needed if that is the intent for the streetscape. There are also no, I think the comment was made that benches and other amenities would be provided or would be coming, but no shown on the plan. There aren't any seating elements or other features for the public as they're passing through the streetscapes. I also do agree with the staff report about animating the corner and creating more of a moment there. I think it's going to be very easy just to pass this building by. I think if there's a moment there that signifies the entry and highlights it, I think that there's an opportunity for more of a special moment there, which would be nice. And then there were some comments about the paving materials on the plans as far as like where there's brick edging and other elements. You can start to see it in some of the plans, but it's not very clear where there will be brick or concrete in some of the landscape plans. So I would encourage that to be shown in more detail, but and specifically, showing those tree pit zones being enlarged. And then I think I had one other one here. And then just the comment about I appreciate you bringing that up about the parking meters. It would be nice to see those on the plan to see where they are going to be located. We often see it where they come back at the end and they end up just cluttering the entire streetscape with the light poles and other amenities. So having those on the plan or planning for those in advance would be advantageous, and ensuring that streetscape is as active and open as you hope it's going to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. We'll move on to Mr. Sharma.
Yes, so I have a couple of comments and recommendations. If you could, the parking on the circulation and the traffic circulation and the parking slide. Okay, so it looks like the alley is two-way. I don't know what's the width of the alley. So my concern is that westbound traffic on Allegheny, if they try to make a left turn into the alley, they might create, the traffic issues. I would recommend that traffic engineering review this. And I'm not sure if there was any need of a traffic impact study done on this one, or it qualifies for the traffic impact study, so that needs to be looked into this. So that's my one comment. The next is the courtyard. Can we go to that slide, please? Okay, well, the one that shows the depiction of the okay, so I don't see any space or the area reserved for children, or maybe I'm not getting it right. There should be some space for children to play. The last comment that I have, if fire department look into the building and what are the plans for emergency exit, are door, mag locks and fail-safe locks, or any other plans for the emergency exit?
I think life safety is a bit out of our purview, but if the applicant could address the courtyard design for children, what elements are there for children, or if that's not your target market, address that. And then I think your second question was the first question was the alley width. If you could answer those two questions, that'd be helpful.
Yes, the one thing what I would recommend about the alley that left turn be prohibited. Westbound left turn into the alley either by signage or a island with, I mean, a channelized island that cannot allow the vehicles to enter into the alley. Only the westbound vehicles. Yeah.
David, do you know the width of the alley?
So Willard, I can take that. It's about 20 foot wide. The alley a little wider than that.
That's
And,
sufficient.
and I think
But left turn-
Mr. Sharma, one of your other comments was would a TIS be required, and it is required and will be submitted and processed as part of the development plan process. But initial findings in coordination with the scoping with both county transportation as well as SHA have not identified any failing intersections or any failing movements or concerns there.
And I'll just quickly comment on the courtyard and the playground area. I mean, we can revisit that, but the target kind of audience of this building, I don't think that there's going to be too much of a need for that. So that's why you don't really see anything right now. We anticipate it being a lot of like younger professionals.
Mr. Sharma, any other further questions or comments?
No, I don't have. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ra?
Sure. Thank you for the presentation. I think the staff report was pretty comprehensive and the other panelists' comments as well. I would just like to make sure that we have more details on how you're trying to achieve either NGBS or LEED standards with these buildings. Right now, there's just not enough information to convince me that they could achieve it. It seems like you do have a plan, so please provide more details to make sure that it will be in compliance. And one more thing is the tree savings plan. I don't know if you have any staging plans or anything like that to make sure that the trees won't be damaged, or at least you'll be doing the best possible. Right now, from the renderings and the plans, it just seems very precarious, the locations of the trees and how close they are to the building. So just having, again, more details on that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ra. Mr. Khan, you're up next.
Yes, thank you. I agree with most of the comments that were made, including what the staff report. I would add just a couple things. I want to be very careful about the screening of the garage, since part of that is open to the south, and an open area that's being seen really from the courthouse. I believe there's an open space along Baltimore Avenue that where you can see the garage. I want to be, understand exactly how much screening we can really get there to sort of hide those cars just from direct observation. The other thing I would say is that that concern about the colors used in the building, and I come at that from perspective that so much of that part of Towson particularly are relatively simple structures that are generally in a beige range or a brown range or a tan range. And I think that, and are really much simpler than this building overall in terms of the number of different components and the way this has been set up. So, I would encourage either simplifying some of the detailing of this and making the building not quite so busy, or approach that idea with using materials that might be much more similar in color, even though they could vary, but sort of soften the building. I think it's just really out of place with what's happening around it particularly. And I think that can be solved with some thought. And that's what I would add to the conversation.
Thank you for that, Mr. Khan. And I'll add my own comments and a few questions to this. I definitely agree with the comments on the tree pits. I think, 4 foot is fairly narrow. The 10-foot length is great, but that, especially with sycamores and even maples, sycamores will grow out and around those tree pits. And I don't think, especially with I think I heard the existing tree pits on Baltimore are 7 foot wide. And I agree with the other panelists and the city staff that really to maintain those trees, I would give a little bit of the dooryard area for the tree pits. I would also encourage, a 6 foot clear pedestrian zone in downtown Towson, but I would give that foot actually to the tree pits. So keep that, I would suggest keeping that at 5 as proposed, but expanding those tree pits. A question that I have is the on-street parking. I wasn't sure, are you removing any parking spaces through this? No, I see no, so I'll just move on from that comment. I agree with the comments that Mr. Khan just mentioned about and the staff's comments about the warmer, lighter colors. I feel like we're in a very 50 Shades of Gray phase right now with architectural design, but that's not contextual with the surrounding. I think keeping some of the grays are probably okay if they move to the more warm French gray tone. But it does, I think when we look at the context and the existing buildings surrounding it and just the overall Towson, not to mention the natural materials of Baltimore, having a red brick as their natural material. If you dig up clay and fire it, you're going to come out with a reddish brick here. And I think we're losing touch with that a little bit. So I would encourage the applicants to look at a slightly warmer palette to be more consistent with the context as well as reflective of the vernacular architecture and materials of the area. The second note on materiality is one of the design criteria is to stay away from, I don't know how it's put, I'd have to go back and look, but false materials. And I think in the point-by-point response, it said we're avoiding any, but then I see a manufactured stone, and I'm wondering how that, how that correlates or how that is supported by that. I would, if we're using, that manufactured stone that you see in the bottom right of this exhibit, why not just use brick instead of stone? Brick's more, again, a natural material that is, it's a synthetic material, and the way that it meets the ground plane, that material requires that it hovers above the ground plane. That doesn't really meet the ground plane. They're due to water absorption and other things. Otherwise, you void the warranty. And we have brick. You have brick in your material palette already. I would just encourage that to meet the ground. Again, towards that simplification that Mr. Khan said, I think that would help. I do agree with the benches at the corner. Just show them on the if it's a bench or two. I don't think it needs to be, a bench at between every tree pit, but I think at that corner would help to animate that corner that you've heard comments from the county as well as the panel members to activate that corner a little bit. Let's see. So let me just look through my notes. In regards to there is a comment from in the staff report talking about parking. I would just say, and I think my numbers are right, you have 142 dwelling units, 147 parking provided. I would just add.
Can I just correct you? It's 143 unit apartments and 161 parking spaces.
Oh, okay. I don't know. That's odd. I don't know if that's in the staff report. Or in any event, I would say that even with those numbers even escalated, I would say that's very adequate for downtown Towson. I would not really want to encourage or see any more parking. I think that's a good ratio for this downtown area. I would encourage even, one per dwelling unit. So I think that's adequate. I'll just go on record saying that I support that. And let's see, I think I would also encourage a tree saving plan by enlarging those tree pits as much as possible, to the 7 foot would be ideal on Baltimore Street, up to 6 feet minimum on Allegheny. But also having a tree saving plan that looks at if root trimming is needed during construction to acclimate the trees to the construction that's happening, to have a plan for not compacting the soils more. And if we're really thinking about, and it's very clear in the downtown plan and the work that people have done, that saving the trees is critical, and providing good footing for new trees. There should be a construction method. There should be a tree saving plan written that documents how that's going to happen and best practices used in that. And I believe that is all. So with me being the last, I will, give me just one moment, just go back and ask if there's any further discussion from any of the panelists. And if not, if someone would like to make a motion.
I have one question, Cecily, is that the balconies that appear on this corner of the rendering, what's the depth of those, or the purpose of those?
Sure. I can respond to that. Mr. Khan, they're going to be approximately 4 foot in depth. We're still working through some of the details in depth with that unit on that corner specifically, but that's kind of the intention there. And I will also mention I can respond if the panel wishes me to respond to a few of Mr. Khan's comments, and also to the comment about the warmer palette. We have started studying that, and if interested, we can show that if the panel would like to see something.
Let me pause there for a second and just
Okay.
ask procedurally if we can entertain that. I would love to see it, but Marta or Jen, is that something that if it hasn't been submitted in advance that we can look at?
I'm sorry, my audio was cutting out a little bit. What was it that we want to look at? If it
So
hasn't,
Mr. Marcosi suggested that he has the team has started to look at a warmer color palette. It wasn't with the submission, but they have it available.
I think it certainly helps for discussion purposes.
Right.
That's something technically we can allow them to share, or does it have to be sent to Marta?
No, if they have it for right now, they can certainly share it.
So I just stopped sharing my screen. And who would like to share that drawing?
Mr. Marcosi?
Yep, David Marcosi.
Can you try to share it and let me know if you can do that?
Yeah, it's not giving me the opportunity to share.
I will try to do that. Just a second.
Sorry, I know we're crossing protocol with the presentation, but I think it's worth getting the panel's eyes on what we started studying.
Let me try something here.
David, are you able to email it to Marta right now if she's not able to figure this out? Just so that we can bring it up on the screen.
I just tried something. Can you try it now?
I have access. Yes, I can share.
Okay, there you go.
Perfect.
Okay. You should be seeing the screen now. So what we've done is we've taken the comments that we received from planning, and I apologize, but we only had a couple of days to put this together. But the intentions here are to provide a red brick to actually respond to one of the comments about a red brick, a Baltimore style brick. We've also lightened the warmer proposed on the corner, giving a little more highlight to that corner, letting that kind of stand out with some beige. And to the comment about the manufactured stone, we are looking to use, and it probably wouldn't be a manufactured stone, but it would be a masonry product that would meet the ground. We would not want to have any weep screed detail at the bottom of that, but that would be used primarily at the bottom corner base. Something heavier and larger in proportion, like something that would wrap that column fully. So we are looking to use real products here. We've softened up the other portions of the project with gray hardy siding instead of some darker ones. And we did keep the top of the building relatively different because we do want to, as also recommended in the design guidelines, to separate the top of the building and kind of start breaking down the scale of the architecture, which is what we're looking to do. And I'll also mention, Mr. Khan, to some of your points about simplifying the building. I understand your comments, especially in this neighborhood of Towson. There are a lot of very simple buildings. There's only probably relatively 2 other multifamily scaled projects within probably a quarter-mile radius of this. And our intention here was to create a rhythm that responded to that scale and that use of a project. So that's kind of what we're seeing. I don't think it's overly complicated, but we can look at responding to some of your comments in that level of detail.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think it does go away, at least for myself, to see the studying that's involved and the responsiveness to comments. Mr. Khan, do you want to add anything to your comments based on seeing this?
No, I think I appreciate being able to see this, and I think it is much more successful in the context of where it is. I think that some further study of some of the commentary that we've had would be helpful to make it that much better. But I think it certainly will work much more appropriately in this kind of a palette.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and I will say that I agree with the stepping back of the building and some of the massing in the bays to break down the scale here. And I do appreciate that you've put a cap on this building and respected kind of grounding the building and the base, middle, top, which I think is important and is often lacking. So that's regardless of the color, just the mat. I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that comment. So thank you for that additional information and responsiveness. And I'll turn to my panel members and ask if someone has a comprehensive list enough to put forth a motion. And hearing no volunteers, I'm going to ask if Matt will step forward. You had a fairly comprehensive list that started us off. If you could kind of go through that, summarize that, as well as some of the comments that we've heard from the other panelists, and then we can add to it and subtract as needed.
Sounds good. And actually, I have, just in looking at that plan, I had one other question for the team, if I can ask it real quick.
Sure.
Just I think as the community affectionately calls this the secret garden, I think it's a pretty unique element in Towson, and you're creating a beautiful courtyard in this space, but it's completely hidden from street view. I don't know if it's possible, but you have on the ground plane, you have a very interesting kind of cut through in the building on the upper floors, but it would be very interesting if there was a way to create some relief on that street section where there could be a peek of the garden that you're creating on the inside, just as a small nod to what was there historically. I mean, obviously you're not going to be able to recreate that, but hinting that there was something there before and having something new there could be of interest to kind of help tell your story and connect back to the neighborhood a bit more. So just a suggestion there. So comments, I do have a list here. So how do you want me to do it, Cecily? Just list them out and then we'll figure out which ones we want to put in?
Well, you can do that, but I would also say if you could make a stance on how this should be processed, meaning it's approved with conditions, or requires a return. We can all weigh in on that, but if you could make a stance with your motion on that.
I'm going to defer on the coming back because to me, I think the biggest item is the architecture and the color and the blending in with the community and the neighborhood. So I guess the one question is going back to Jennifer, is what we saw today. Can we consider that as part of what we're commenting on, or does it have to come in again?
Since it has been presented to the panel, in response to the staff report, and I think probably as points of discussion from points raised by the panel members, it can be considered if you wanted to fold that into your motion, that, you know, the renderings presented at the meeting is the direction that of the architectural style, coloring, and materials is that the panel views it should be, certainly, yes.
All right, and then can you just answer another question for me? If there were architectural adjustments, are they going to work with you, or do they come back to Cecily to work on this?
So that's where I guess your disposition recommendation would come, you know, either approving it, if approving it with conditions would kick it to planning staff and the DRP chair. So that would be, yes, Cecily, myself, and Marta, and others. Or you could have then come back to another meeting for follow-up.
Okay, gotcha. All right, well, I'm leaning towards approving with conditions and having them work with planning staff and with Cecily, but I'm gonna come back to that, Cecily, at the end. But the conditions that were consistent would be revising the streetscape sections to conform to a larger tree pit dimension, as noted in the downtown guidelines, a minimum of 6 feet along Allegheny, studying widening that along Baltimore Street, the preparation of a tree safe plan, especially along Baltimore Street. I think that we need to see where those trees land on the streetscape and the adjustments that may need to be made. I do think that we should show the parking meter locations on the plan if possible. Concur with the staff report. I do think we also need to show the fencing if needed along the bioretention along the buildings. Donald brought it up. I do think that more attention may be needed at the corner of the parking garage that's visible from Patriot Plaza and the screening. So I'm going to note that, and then I'd like for you guys to discuss that. I do agree that working with Cecily and the chair on the colors of the building, moving in the direction of what was presented at today's meeting, is going to be the preferred direction of the panel. And then I think addressing the staff report comments and specifically animating the main corner and entry of the building by providing additional seating opportunities for the public and for users of the building should also be included as well. Those are kind of my initial notes.
Yeah, I would say that list is fairly comprehensive. Mr. Connor, are there any other specifics? I mean, I think for myself, the simplification of the material palette, the warming of the, you know, the direction they're headed that they showed us, warming up the colors are enough. Was there anything else specifically that you would like to add to that?
Not really, but I think the motion should include that we approve of the recommendations of the staff with the various specific issues that we've identified.
That sounds good. And I'll just state, I agree with you, Matt, on that it's approved with conditions, working with staff and myself to move through. I don't think this warrants a return to the DRP. Happy to hear from any other panelists who feel otherwise on that.
I agree with that. And I do think it's important to address the concerns mentioned in the staff report in addition to the details that Matt mentioned.
Very good. Okay, so Either, I don't know, Marta or someone from the county, do you want to recap that for us? And then we can make a motion to second, or should we try to recap that?
I think that you all as the panel need to do the recap and the motion. I don't think we can do that for you.
Okay. So Matt, if you would just one more time, just to go through with those additional notes, if you could make the formal motion, I appreciate it.
All right, I will try. I'm going to see if I missed anything. So I'm going to make a motion to approve with conditions to work with staff and the DRP chair on the following items. One is to review all items identified in the staff report and provide responses. Two, review tree pit dimensions along Baltimore and Allegheny. Look for 6 feet along Allegheny, a minimum of 7 feet along Baltimore Street. Provide a tree safe plan for Baltimore Street to preserve the red maples, and also show any impacts to the proposed plan as a basis of that design. Third, continue in the direction of the building materials and the warmer color palette as shown during tonight's meeting, and the warmer tones that blend well with the surrounding neighborhood. Again, focus on providing some seating opportunities at the main corner building entry. And then finally, provide a bit more detail about the screening of the parking garage and the visible corner from the Patriot Plaza end of the site.
Good job.
Very good. And I'll say, do we have a second?
On the motion, this is Hyun.
Thank you for that. And I'll just ask Jen, do you need anything further, or are you good with that? And can we move to?
No, I think that's great. I think
Okay.
that was summarized perfectly, and I think we can, get through everything we need to do with follow-up conditionally.
Great. Then I'll ask my fellow panelists to say aye if you're in support.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. That's unanimous, and thank you for that. The motion carries. And my last my last request is if I can have a motion from the panelists to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Khan, and may I have a second?
This is Matt, second.
Excellent. And all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, and that's unanimous as well. So I thank you all for this evening. I thank the applicants for their presentation, sharing additional materials. I thank county staff for supporting us through this one and giving us feedback.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.